Can I do it?
Can you do what? You can pick up the drumstick.
Mommy, you can sit and watch while I watch on the camera. Looking.
All right, it is 5:03. We're going to go ahead and get started, and people will drag in as they come. I want to welcome you to the First Seventh-day Adventist Church. For those of you who have never been here before, welcome and thank you for coming. And I'm totally excited about tonight's seminar, because as I've been picking some of their brains before we got started, I just had a lot of questions and things that I think that will be very beneficial to us, not just now, but as we are good stewards of our money forever. So before we get started with this evening's program, I'm going to go ahead and open up with a word of prayer, and then we will get started. Father in heaven, we just want to thank you for a wonderful day. It's not as warm as it was this couple days ago, but your presence is still with us, and so we're asking for you to be with those who are on their way here. And God, we're just asking for this to be a very fruitful and enlightening conversation about the one thing that we struggle with the most, money. Be with all of our presenters as they give us the information that may be, sometimes some of it may be hard to hear, but it'll be the truth anyhow. In Jesus' name, amen. Our first presenter for this evening is going to be Heather Gunn. And she is not related to the Kathy Gunn that we had here a couple of weeks ago for our COVID conversation. She is a representative from Regions Bank, which is who we bank with as a church. And so without further ado, the platform is yours.
Amen.
So first, I just want to thank Pastor Tina for inviting me to come speak today. As you'll see as I can talk through this is a passion for me. Showing people just different ways that you can spend your money and allocate your funds, and if just the slightest difference in how you spend can help how you save. So I'm just going to hand out a couple packets. Part of what Regions does is, here you go. We do these courses as a courtesy to our community. So they already have everything all kind of planned out for me. So that's wonderful as well. But you'll see, you've got a packet. First copy is my business card. That is a direct link to me, the branch, everything. So if you're a customer, for sure save this, because this is our direct phone number, which you may or may not be able to find on the internet, especially once COVID is over, it probably won't be there. But I just want to, again, take some time. My name's Heather. I'm the assistant manager at the Regions right down the street. And like Pastor Tina said, you guys do, as the church, bank with us, so we appreciate that. Yes. Did you say it were yours too?
You said amen.
Amen, yes. So you've got 3 handouts. We're going to start on the first one, the planning, income, and expenses. If you notice at the very bottom, there's a QR code. That is a link to a 2-minute assessment. And it's going to ask you for my banker ID, because those assessments are going to come directly back to me. So that if you have a question, or if you want to sit down and let's go over everything, we can do that. And you do not have to be a customer of Regions for that. We will be happy to sit down and help you with anything But it's gonna ask you for my banker ID, which is on the bottom of the card over here, and that just links them directly to me. Sorry, I'm following my notes here too. So if you notice, that first page is creating a spending plan. So part of savings is also creating a spending plan. So we can't have a savings plan without a spending plan. So if you'll notice, it kind of breaks down where you're spending your money on a day-to-day basis. But you'll also notice that at the bottom where it says personal savings. Yes. The left-hand side of the packet talks about wages. So that's where your income's coming from. It also talks about, it has a line for other, which would be anything that may not be on a consistent basis as far as like maybe your tax return, or if you get a bonus check from work, those types of things. But it also then talks about your spending on the other side. So with that, the first line is savings. So why do we think savings is on the first line? Because we want to pay ourselves first. I know it sounds difficult and it sounds counterproductive, but even just $5 or $10 a week, a month that you put aside can add up for those what if situations. So definitely think about that. And another, you want to have something set aside for anything. So what do you think you could be saving for specifically?
Car,
Mm-hmm.
the down payment on a house.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yes. But also those what ifs, the emergencies. I mean, we're in a society today that you could get COVID tomorrow and not work for 2 weeks. And, what happens if you don't work for that 2 weeks? The rent's still due, the mortgage is still due. We got to make those payments. So having even if you've got $300-400 set aside, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when it comes to paying something, it really can be. So has anybody set a savings goal or a financial goal for themselves at this point? You want to share?
Sure.
Okay. Just something small.
So I think I increased my savings 20%.
Mhm.
And that started off with, because I'm also self-employed
Yes.
too. So there's an income increase plan that I have, and it kind of corresponds with the savings plan that I have too. So I just did it by percentage, monthly percentage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, and you're seeing that goal, it's achievable, it's not unrealistic, which is two things we want to make sure that our goals are they achievable and attainable. So do we ask ourselves, where does our money go each week and each month? Yeah. Yes, for sure. So if you look at those percentages on the expenses side, it kind of gives you a layout of where things should be. The housing, do y'all see that says 35%? That should be 35% basically of your take home, because you still got to be able to have utilities. You got to eat. I mean, and I can't tell you, even just this week, how many people I've sat down with where their percentages are so off, and we write down what they've spent, and there's hardly anything left at the end of the month, and I'm like, but you haven't even eaten yet. So we've got to make sure that we're balancing our finances and knowing what's coming in as opposed to what's going out, and what's a need.
Question.
Yes,
So when you say 35%, you're saying that your mortgage or your rent should be 35% of your take-home income?
yes.
Okay.
Because if you're looking, especially if you're looking at from in my world, when we go to lend, we can only lend you up to so much debt to income. So if you're making, for round even numbers, $3,000 a month, but you're spending $1,500 a month in rent or mortgage, that's 50% of your funds. So we can't even lend you anything else after that, because that's over the debt to income ratio that we're legally allowed to lend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and those are in place to protect you. If you come to us to lend and we can't lend you because you're over your debt to income, that's because we need to make sure that you can eat, that you can pay your cell phone bill, things like that. So, and to your point with the taxes, we're seeing that now with a lot of customers who are writing a lot of things off, which is wonderful for their taxes, but then when they go to lend, we don't have that income because they're writing it off. So kind of a double-edged sword on that one. If you look at our next worksheet, the Jumpstart to Savings, Regions, like I said, we have several different programs out there online. They're all completely free and they're all accessible. You don't have to come to one of these to look at them. They're all accessible. So we have worksheets online and you'll see I've included a couple in your packet. There's the 52-week challenge and a personal spending tracker on there as well. There's different articles.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're good.
I do want to ask a question.
Okay.
So this is more of a churchy question.
Okay.
So I'm looking at this.
I know.
10% savings, how utilities will go down. And then yet as, as Christians, we're also giving 10%
Yes.
away already,
Mhm.
for tithe and then whatever we should give for offering. So how do you factor that part in?
That would be up towards the savings, because that's the same thing. It's not on here, and I know it's not on here, I'm well aware it's not on here.
Uh-huh.
You wanna do that on the top end too.
So then you're talking about 20%.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then you got your 35 and, housing. But yes, definitely, and then it says here savings 10%, which is wonderful, that's ideal.
Mhm.
But even $5 or $10 a week, I mean, just something to step back for those what if situations, that emergency fund. And even the changing, and we're gonna get into this in the next section, but changing your habits.
Mhm.
I know I'm guilty of that $5 coffee at Starbucks and, that stuff. If you take $5 a day times 30, that's a chunk. I mean, whereas if that's just a little tweaking in your spending, that then you can give more, you can save more just by drinking, the $8 canister. I think I saw the commercial, the canister Folgers is $8 or something. Having that at home with your $5 coffee maker, as opposed to, you're spending time in the drive-through line at Starbucks or walking into Kroger. And then if y'all are like me, when I go to Kroger, I don't just come out with coffee. I come out with $100 of other stuff too. It's like Target. You just go for the dollar bin and it's bad. But just doing that same little tweaking. This year, the statistic, $5 of coffee can add up to more than $1,000 a year. I mean, that's an extra every $1,000 in your savings. Gosh, she's shaking her head like, oh no. I don't know, am I taking your coffee away? No, okay. But also comparison shop. And there's a lot of things that people don't realize that you can comparison shop. Your homeowner's insurance. Did y'all know you could comparison shop your homeowner's insurance? Your renter's insurance. Those are things that can affect, and every year homeowner's insurance goes up. So then your mortgage payment goes up, where you can shop your homeowner's insurance. And I had a customer come in this week and tell me that she shopped her homeowner's insurance and it saved her $500 a year. I mean, that adds up. I mean, that's $50 a month on a payment, basically, almost. So definitely. They've got staycation, cut the cable cord, and we did that in our house, and I'll tell you, we haven't looked back. It's been wonderful. And then public libraries as resources too. If you don't have internet at home, there's always a public library, and it's totally free to do that. And then also, if you're setting a savings goal and changing your expenses and rearranging things like that, name your goal. So like if you're saving specifically to go on a vacation, don't tell your family, hey, we're cutting, the internet or cable, and now, we're saving $200 a month. Tell them it's not we're cutting cable, we're going to Disney World, or we're going to the Grand Canyon, or even Fall Creek Falls. You're going somewhere, and name that goal. It helps with that as well. The last page you'll see has got different articles. And of course, it's got the websites on it that you can go to. All this is out there. These sheets that I printed for you are right on that website. So definitely, and there's more. There's podcasts that you can do. There's 10-minute courses that are mobile friendly. So you can sit in the drive-through line almost to do one. If that's what you're wanting to do, the car rider line, and watch a podcast or listen to a podcast or watch a webinar online. And we also do schedule live ones that you can be interactive with as well. But different tools, different sheets. I gave y'all this sheet here, the where to know where my money goes. Because this is where I start when I sit down with my customers and we start talking about a budget and savings, is we write everything down and look at it and say, okay, where are we spending what, where, and when? Even get a calendar and lay it out, because that is also a huge help with the budget, is knowing when different things are due, as opposed to everything being due on the 1st. You know, knowing, okay, this is due the 15th, well, I can shift this around. Another tip with budgeting is don't look at it as my first paycheck is when my mortgage comes out of that check. What if we went with the concept of 50% of everything out of half 2 checks? Because generally most people get paid twice a month. So if you take half your mortgage from your first check, half your mortgage from the second check, half your mortgage from, or half your car payment from the first and half from the second. It takes a month or 2 to get it going, but then it kind of helps things flow a little bit better because you've got that money already set aside. And also having your savings separate from your checking. I know a lot of people think they like to keep it in the checking, but then you see it. Where if it's set aside in a separate account, it's out of sight, out of mind. So most banks, if you have a checking account, you can get a complimentary savings account with no minimum balance. So have an automatic transfer where it sets, moves over $10 a week, $5 a week, and just write it out just like a bill of anything else that you do. But definitely start that. And then this is the 52-week savings challenge. There's 4 different challenges on here. It can help you save anywhere from just over $1,300 to $10,000. So the most common one that I've had customers do is the 52-week savings challenge, where you start with whatever week it is of the year, you're putting that amount in an account. So the most you're putting aside is $52 a week, which can sound like a lot, but if you kind of allocate it a little bit, it can help. But that'll save you $1,378 in a year. And I think they have the reverse. Yeah, they have the reverse next to it, where you start in January with 52 and work down to the dollar the last week of the year. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to share?
Question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
when it comes to savings accounts, I'm assuming you recommend shopping around for the best interest rates?
So yes, but I will say in this market, there's really not. They're all there. It's basically 0.01% across the board. With Regions, what we do offer is if you have a checking account with us, you obviously get the complimentary savings. But if we set up just a $10 transfer every month, so that's just $10 a month. So if you look at it, $250 a week basically, that we transfer from your checking to your savings, you get a 1% annual bonus on the savings up to a $10,000 balance, so up to a $100 bonus. So I know, you've probably got something that's paying around that, but it's not necessarily always liquid. So this makes it liquid, it's accessible, but it only does on that first $100 or first $10,000. But my money markets aren't paying 1% on $10,000, so definitely. And you can, y'all didn't say this, you can have more than one account that does that, so something to think about. And you can separate, like if you've got your emergency fund, have your emergency fund, then have your trip fund. You can separate them. I've had several customers do that so that they've got an emergency nest egg for the what ifs, but they've got that savings goal to save for a trip or vacation or car. Yeah. Ladies, do y'all have any questions? No. I do ask you to do the assessment just so that it kind of gives you a score of kind of where you are a little bit financially, and it goes to me so I can see it and we can talk about it. Well, again, thank you all. I think my time's up. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
My son said, "Mom, do you understand what she's saying?" I said, "Yeah, because I pay bills." That's why I understand exactly what she's saying.
And he can have a savings account too.
Oh, you can have a savings, if he does his chores, he can have a savings account. Yes, I'm paying bills. I'm paying close attention to these percentages. This is very helpful and useful information. So thank you so much. Our next presenter is Dana J. All right, come on up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here this afternoon. Again, I'm Dana J. And I just want to thank Pastor Tina for inviting me here today. I am from Murfreesboro. I live in Murfreesboro now, so it was nice to have a nice Sabbath drive over to Springfield today. I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about taxes. We are currently in the tax season, so some of you may have filed taxes or be getting ready to file your tax returns. And there are so many things that come into play because everybody's situation is just a little bit different. So I'm really going to talk to you about a very high aerial view of things, and then if you have some questions, we'll talk about that. So these people that are presenting with me are, we all are kind of partners in your financial plan, in your financial situation. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how well you've navigated these things during the year, could play into how you do at the end of the year with your tax situation. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that is not really discussed. I've done 2 workshops this week. One for the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, and I usually am dealing with small businesses. But some of the things that come into play with small businesses also come into play with individual tax preparers. And the most important thing, I believe, is choosing a good tax preparer.
Yes.
So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but did you realize the tax industry is not regulated? Meaning, any person in the United States can put up a shingle and say, I'm in the tax business.
Oh, wow.
You do not have to have a certification, training, knowledge even,
Oh, wow.
to get into the tax business. So, buyer beware, okay? You want to be very careful about who you choose for a couple of reasons, especially as your taxes are more complicated. So you want to consider a preparer. We know the chains, and I'm not gonna promote or put down, but they're chains. They're CPAs and accountants. They're just general tax preparers and enrolled agents. And these people intersect with the IRS on different levels. You can be a certified tax preparer with the IRS. That means you don't necessarily have a formal degree or training with the training, but the IRS recognizes you as a legitimate tax preparer because you chose to be. CPAs and accountants have formal training. It doesn't mean they always have formal training in taxes because they are a CPA or an accountant. So you want to make sure your CPA and accountant is also a tax preparer and tax person. And then you have attorneys and enrolled agents. Attorneys have a natural high status with the IRS, as do enrolled agents. Enrolled agents are people who take a test, so they get natural, the highest standing, like along with attorneys with the IRS. So you want to make sure when you talk to or choose a tax preparer, find out what kind of training they have, what their background is. And it doesn't mean because they're a CPA or because they don't have a certification or not, that they don't know what they're doing. But you want to base how you choose them on your needs, on their background, and in their experience. So I run into situations where people are kitchen table things, or they have front store shops, and they choose not to sign your tax return. If the person is not signing your tax return, that's a sign. So you want to make sure that the person who is preparing your tax return is willing to stand behind it. And it's so important that you choose the right person. The other thing that's important is to consider that your tax preparer is not just for you to see once a year. Your tax preparer is a person that you should have a relationship with year-round for many, many reasons. Because once you see us in the end of the year, the next year, it's too late to make any changes, right? And so you've got a great budget over there, and now you've saved, you've made more money, and your income has jumped $15,000. And when I saw you, I just said, you know what? Just save 18%. Well, now you're in the 22% bracket. And you and I haven't accounted for this great savings plan, this great income plan that you have. And now you might owe a little more or get a little less refund because you haven't checked with your preparer throughout the year. So if there are significant changes in your tax situation, it's important that you check in. So what does that mean? It's important that you have a tax preparer that you have a relationship with. People that are just there for the season and gone, probably not the best idea. You want to have somebody, there could be there are plenty of tax preparers that you can choose from, but you just want to vet them properly. And you want to have a tax planning situation. So most people are intimidated by taxes, don't know how to read a tax return, don't understand what's going on. You listen and take the word of whomever, sign it, boom, boom. You just want to know, am I getting money back or no? If your tax preparer doesn't explain to you why you have the outcome you have in a way that you can understand it. Where's your son? I know the tax preparer. You should be able to understand at least the 1040 and what happened on it. And they should be able to explain to you in regular language what happened and why. Because at the end of the day, if something comes back, it's coming back on you, not the tax preparer. Unless they've done something really egregious and something they could be fined for, you are gonna owe or not go or owe or suffer the penalty based on it being your tax return. And who signs it? You sign it. So you are approving everything that happens on that tax return. So you wanna talk to them, plan, tell them what you wanna do. If you are thinking about buying a house, as she said, tell your tax preparer. Because what are they going to do? They're going to want to know your, 3 years? 2 years. 2 years of tax returns. You want to plan that out, especially if you own a business. Because as she said, we have a very opposite approach. We are trying to mitigate income and lower tax liability. And the banks need to see income, which is going to probably raise your tax liability. So you want to strategize that over a certain amount of time. So those are little quick points that I want to talk to you about. I gave you a little sheet and we won't be able to cover everything, but you can have it. But there's a couple of updates that I want to talk to you about for the 2021 tax year. First one being the IRS, as you have heard, maybe, they are so behind. They are swamped with tax returns that they haven't prepared. In the chart on the first page on the bottom, you will see in the millions of unprocessed tax returns. So if you had a tax return and you needed an amendment, or you hadn't filed for a few years and you had to go back and file a few times, if you had any issue with the IRS that caused you to have to redo a tax return, it is likely that you won't hear from them anytime soon. In 2020, they have almost 12 million tax returns that are not processed. It is hard for you to call them now. Some days they don't. I tried to call them about something. They say, "Don't call us today. We're too busy." That's the second time this week. I will have a special number to talk to them by. They say we're way too busy, we can't talk to you. So if you're trying to reach them, you have some issue outstanding, you haven't heard from them in months and months and months, you are not alone. You are in the company of millions and millions of people. So everyone keep that in mind. They have backlogs. I also want to talk to you about, last year we had some called the CARES Act. Because of COVID, there were some things that went into play. You were able to theoretically withdraw some of your own money, your retirement money, without penalty, up to $100,000 without penalty. And you had the option of paying that back over 3 years. Just want to remind you that, don't forget that you did that if you did. Your second installment is going to come out this year for that payment. The standard deduction has increased this year. If you're married, it's up to $12,550. And for those of you who may itemize, the idea was to get rid of the itemization and the dependents. So we no longer claim dependents on the tax return. They're trying to kill the refund market. They're trying to kill the claiming people who aren't your children market. So they're trying to put these processes in place where people start kind of just zeroing out because of the fraud that goes along with the refunds. So each year we see changes with the tax code that's going to help work toward that. If you got the child tax credit advance payment, there should be a form that you take to the IRS. If you notice, if you have children, each year there's a credit, $2,000 per child. If you have 2 children, you would get a $4,000 credit at the end of the year. What they did this year is they automatically opted you in to start receiving half of that money up front. So many of you with children got this money throughout the year. You want to make sure that whatever form you have or whatever proof you've had of what you received, take that to your tax preparer, because they're going to have to report that money to make sure that you got what you were supposed to get. And do the research with that, because when you report it inaccurately, it hits you back on the back end. We have to file amendments, or they'll do stuff with your refund that you already spent, and they'll make an adjustment after the fact. So want to think about that. And also the same with the recovery rebate credit. This is a big thing that people forget. There were 3 stimulus payments, guys. There was one in April. That was the first one of 2020. There was one in January of 2021. And even though you received it in the new tax year, it was still filed on the previous tax year. And we reported those last year, the first 1 and 2. The third stimulus payment was received or released in March 2021, 3. This year, they want you to report 3. It's on form 1444C. Most of my clients threw that in the trash. So if you don't have that form, check your bank account. You would have gotten it likely in increments of $1,400 per person in your household that would have been on your tax return. So when someone says to me, "Oh, I only got $800, no, that's not what I'm looking for. $1,400, $2,400, $8,400, $5,600. I'm looking for multiples of that. So you want to make sure you bring that to your tax preparer. There's so much I could go down, and this was an hour presentation for my clients earlier this week, but I wanted you guys to just have the ability to just look at this stuff. And if you have any questions that are more specific, I'll be glad to take them. Yes, ma'am.
I feel like I hear you advocating for seeing a tax preparer versus doing them on your own through like a TurboTax or, whatever. Is that what you're recommending?
I would recommend that generally. There are people who are quite equipped, not most. to do that. I don't find TurboTax very intuitive, quite frankly. I find that people get more tripped up on TurboTax because of the question answer format, and it takes you down rabbit trails, and people just don't always know and can't find what actually is going on. So I think in the long run, I would advocate it, but if you are tech savvy and you are tax savvy, go along with it. I will also say that, was it TurboTax that got hacked the year before last? Yeah, so you want to be careful about that too. You want to make sure your information is guarded, protected, and encrypted. But other than that, I think having a relationship, TurboTax isn't going to help you understand your tax situation like a relationship with a professional will. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm really engaged in this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so if a person is self-employed, I remember when I started as a pastor, I didn't know that my employer didn't take out taxes. I said, oh my, okay. So I didn't have a clue. I mean, I know now, but I didn't have a clue at the front end. Well, how much should I be setting aside? Because before I became a pastor, I had W-2s, those things were already being taken care of. Didn't know, okay, well, what's gonna happen with my Social Security? Like, how does that work? So for people who go into businesses for themselves, what should they be putting aside for taxes and Social Security?
Oh man, that is an excellent question, and it's a loaded question. So for pastors, you have really a hybrid situation going on in your case, because you are kind of considered what we call like a statutory employee. So you work for an agency, but are also able to be treated as a self-employed entity at the same time. So the thing that you as pastors have to realize is that they're not taking out your Social Security and Medicare, which that goes to your retirement. Business owners sometimes forget that, unlike W-2 employees, when we see that W-2, we see what's coming out. We see that number, we see all those other things, FICA, FUTA, and all that other kind of stuff. As a self-employed person, you are responsible for both ends. You're playing both roles. You're playing the role of the worker and the role of the employer. So you have two sets of taxes. So you're being taxed on your income, which goes to the government, but you're also imposing your self-employment tax, which goes toward your Medicare and Social Security that you would normally have taken out of your W-2. Now you're paying that on your own. So I've seen many situations where a person, a self-employed person, may owe very little or zero to the IRS, but owe hundreds of thousands in self-employment and personal tax because they're funding their own self-employment, their own Social Security. So those taxes, you want to just make sure that you pay those. Because I've also had self-employed people that would get the Social Security report card that tells you how I've had pastors who've had tax preparers not know to pay in the self-employment tax. I've had pastors complain and look for tax preparers who just lower their tax liability and go get to retirement and go, I haven't had taxes paid in for the past 10 years, and now my Social Security check is only X amount a month. Because the tax preparer was not talking to them about their long-range plan, their retirement, and Social Security. And so you specifically, and people like you, have to make sure they understand the role of a pastor, particularly in the context that you're in, where you're also W-2. There are many pastors that are just straight Schedule C, and you can treat them like businesses, but your situation is a bit different. And so that for self-employed people, it changes also depending on whether a self-employed person is has a corporation, and things like that. So it can get deep, but I want to make sure that if you are with the chain tax company, that you are with the business section of the chain tax company and not just, don't just walk in and sit down and have an appointment if you have a business. But if you have a business, I would find a professional CPA or something. Or enrolled agent. Or me. Anything else? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well, she gave us a perfect segue into retirement. I do want to say that my kids are definitely paying attention to all that's being said. My daughter came up to me with the savings sheet, and she was like, "Mom, this is just $1 a week." I said, "Listen, I'm willing to help you save if you just do the chores that I ask you to do." It's a win-win situation. Kevin, the floor is yours.
I'm gonna take this mask off, if it's okay. If anybody wants to put it back on, just say so, please, and it won't bother. I'll choke and cough all over myself. My name is Kevin Commander. I have an Edward Jones office directly across the street, down the hill in the middle of the right-hand side. I'm a financial advisor, which means, to your point, absolutely nothing. That's what it says on my card. It says financial advisor. You can be financial advisor too, today. All you have to do is go online and find a certificate that says financial advisor, type your name in it, print it off, and you can go offer your services to anybody that will pay. And you're 100% legal. Financial advisor is not a legally recognized professional designation. So careful, to your point. There are designations and regulatory examinations that you can take that allow you to legally sell and place securities or assets for people on their behalf. But that's way past just saying I'm a financial advisor. So just please be careful. I'm not the get rich quick guy. My crystal ball is broken. So, and I'll be honest with you. So it is. So we use math, data, and statistics in your personal situation to determine goals and objectives and to be strategic in plans. And after that, I won't be boring anymore. Here's some facts. So if we think about fraud in this world, we need to think about who the victims are and what they look like. Statistically, victims of fraud over 60 make up about 75% of the occurrences, although they're only about 17% of the population. So that show you who gets targeted in these situations. I never would have thought I would have seen as many occasions or occurrences of it as I have yearly. And to try to clean up something after it's happened, it's not impossible, but it's not easy by any means. So do me a favor. Unless you are planning on financing something, which we don't want to do, go online to the Better Business Bureau and search up Freeze Credit. That allows you to go to the 3 major credit reporting bureaus and freeze your credit. That way when somebody goes through your garbage and pulls out an envelope, where MasterCard has sent you an application, and they were just simply going to fill it out, send it, label the card, and then intercept it, that will freeze your credit. When they submit that application, MasterCard is not going to approve that because they can't get reporting data back from the credit bureaus. And it's just a 3-minute per bureau process. Then when you get ready to finance a car, finance a house, whatever you want to do, go in there and it's called thawing. You froze it, and now you got to thaw it, process it, get approved to do your thing, then freeze it again. And it does not prevent you from building up a positive credit report. It's still anything, you're paying bills on time, all that is still reported, your credit score still goes up. Could go down, but if you're doing things right, supposedly, it still goes up. So do that. To get upstream on something like that saves a world of hassle. So please do that for me. Save yourself some trouble. Do it not just for you, do it for folks that you know, your mom, dad, brother, sister, whoever. Help them out. Back to financial advisor not being an important job. And so it's not. We've established that. Anybody can be a financial advisor. After that, you can take some regulatory examinations and get the ability to place trades and make recommendations. But know this, somebody in my position has an immediate conflict of interest in this type of situation. Meaning, if you work with me and you pay me for it, and I benefit either physically, financially, or mentally, because we are interacting, then that means I will benefit from working with you, which creates an immediate conflict of interest. Me standing up here giving you information could lead you to one day coming into my office across the street and asking me some questions, meeting with me, hiring me as an advisor. So the only way I can eliminate that is to say this. Feel free to call any day, anytime, speak with me. You leave your checkbook in the car. Don't worry about fees. Come to me with your thoughts, questions, and concerns, and my services will be free of charge. You can leave your money where it is. Leave it in your 401k, leave it with Schwab. I don't care, and I'll treat it I'll be just as diligent with that as I would with any other case. So that eliminates that conflict of interest. Now that that's out of the way, feel free to ask me questions, and not just any question. I want you to ask socially unacceptable, prying, extremely personal questions. And I'm honest about it, and I'll give you an honest answer. Financial advisor, they sure are some pretty folks a lot of times. If you see one, you think I want to be wearing all these clothes on Saturday? So a lot of times you can tell their appearance, they put a little effort into it. I don't have a social media presence. I'm not online. I'm a day away from burning my fingertips to get my fingerprints off. I try to disappear as much as possible. Not that I have anything wrong with social media, but I don't like it, and I don't. So you're not going to see a big web presence from me, but you're more than welcome to have a cell phone number and give me a call if you have any questions. So we got that. We know there's a conflict of interest. We've eliminated that. I want you to ask questions, interrupt me at any time. Don't wait on me to finish the sentence. Throw something at me. If I don't see, I'll stop. Please don't hold back on your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so here's the question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if someone has not been saving for retirement or preparing for retirement, from the moment they started working, how can one begin that process of setting themselves up in a comfortable way for when they are eligible for retirement?
So you kind of got to start with where you are today, right? You say, all right, I want to retire. When do you want to retire? I'd like to retire when I can receive Social Security at 62. Well, how old are we today? Where are we at?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40. And that gives us 22 years. Well, tell me about your financial health. What do we look like? Tell me about debt. Tell me about that consumer debt. Who are we paying interest to? Tell me about houses, vehicles, cars, vacations. What are we spending our money on? And once you get a snapshot of that and say, okay, let's say, and they're not, let's say the house is paid for, we don't have vehicle car notes, and we have an emergency fund, at least 6 months built up. Then we can say, all right, what do we have for assets? 401ks, assets in my IRA. What do we have? And then it's how much do I need to invest and how much does it need to grow to give me the money and the assets I need at 62 to generate what's needed to supplement that Social Security. So Social Security is going to give you some, and I need my investments to generate income as well. So it kind of depends on what they look like here. But the biggest thing is just start. Make that phone call and start. That's it. You'll never know if you don't start. Social Security. At 62, right now, we have the ability to take Social Security. For the first time in your life, and you've been paying it every year, all your life, paying it. Now you turn 62 and you say, I'm going to take it. It's time for daddy to get the paycheck now. I'm going to quit paying it, I'm going to take it. For the first time in your life, Social Security acts like a good investment. meaning that benefit increases by approximately 8% every year that you defer. So if it's 62, I'm gonna get $100 a month. Well, at 63, I'm gonna get 108, and 116, and so on and so forth. So for the first time in your life, Social Security is worth something to you. If you don't have to take it at 62, don't. For most people, 65 and 66 is 100% retirement. It goes up in benefit by 8% until age 70. So maximizing your Social Security benefit is part of a financial planning strategy. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can, don't take it too early. Yes, ma'am.
Is there something about a husband-wife relationship that the wife doesn't start claiming at a later time than the husband? My mother talked to me about,
Yes, ma'am.
my dad was taking it,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
she didn't start taking it, I think until 72.
So
Maybe it is 70, I just don't remember.
you can take it between 62 and 70, right? That's first. Then the spousal part of it can look a couple different ways. You can take it, you can get half of your spousal benefit from them. What if the spouse dies and you want to take it early? That's where it becomes to look a little bit different, and it's not so cut and dry. They have an 800 number. You wait on the phone. You will be on hold 45 minutes, guaranteed. 45 minutes, guaranteed. But they were the only people. I've got SSA.gov that we get an estimate, right? That's close. We'll call that Robertson County beer man. That's close. It's not exact, but it's close. But if you want to be exact about it, you need to call them and let you work up that estimate for it specifically for your case.
Do you recommend doing that now or when you're ready to retire?
I wouldn't wait till I was ready.
Okay.
It ought to be part of any financial plan, because the whole thing is, all this comes down to is income. If you watch the commercials during any golf tournament, it's all the same. It's all financial guys talking about being, you'll start a vineyard or buy a yacht. No, you don't want to do that. You just want to be able to maintain the lifestyle that you want and not run out of money. That's it. That's what you want to do. You want to have the income necessary to maintain your lifestyle. So we got Social Security. Now we want to supplement. How do we do it? With this. As a rule, what you have as your retirement assets, savings, will generate about 4% without depleting your principal. So if you had $1 million in the bank at 62, you could generate about $40,000 worth of income, and you're going to still have $1 million, whether the market goes up, down, sideways, no matter what the interest rates are, no matter what the market's doing, that's going to maintain the same, at 4%, $40,000 coming. What are the goals, right? So we've heard retirement a few times. There's a few. Retirement's kind of a two-part system. Number one, you're always in one of these two situations, either planning for retirement or living in retirement. So that's a given. Everybody falls into one of those two. The other part of it is planning for education, saving money on taxes, or let's call it legacy. Your estate issues, passing money, passing wealth from one person to the other, and what's the most tax advantageous way to do it. So that part of the planning is something everybody has to deal with. It's not fun to talk about, but you should have that conversation. Go ahead.
Can you, talk a little bit about I run into a lot that in between taxpayer who's about to retire. They start pulling Social Security, but they're still working, and they end up in kind of a tax conundrum. Because they're not drawing enough money in Social Security to keep them from working, but then they're working too much, and they're having to pay back Social Security. And they're getting penalized. Do you help people kind of navigate through that space so that they are?
It's my job to not let them get in that position.
Okay.
So what she's speaking to is until you were 65 years old, let's say you take Social Security at 62, and you also work. With those two together, anything you make over $17,000 per year is going to be a 2-for-1 reduction on the following year's benefit. So don't. The best thing, what did he say? What did he say about that? He said don't. Just something about don't and taking Social Security and working before the age of 65. If you have to, you have to, but you need to try to avoid it at all possible. If working more is the answer, if you can, that's the answer. Because otherwise, what you're doing is detrimental to your Social Security benefit for the following year. Kind of out there, just you're running real fast and you're not getting a whole lot of traction. Y'all heard that? My dad used to say, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. And that's absolutely right, and especially in this industry. There's a lot of folks out there. There's a lot of famous names you guys have heard of. Vernon Madoff. There's one in the newspaper yesterday over toward Gallatin. My wife Nikki yelled at it in front of me on Facebook because I'm not on Facebook. And then I was like, that's why I'm not on Facebook. Put it down. How would you pick a financial advisor? Number one, like anybody else, do they return your phone calls when you call them and you've got questions? Just return my phone call. I ain't got to do it right now. Just do it soon when you can. And number two, bedside manner. When Kevin leaves his wallet at his home and comes to Region because he don't have lunch money and begs Heather, please, can I take a withdrawal out of my account? I know I don't have my ID, but pretty please help it. And they let me do it because you do. But I don't remember. Y'all let me just take it out of my account. It's never much. It's like $15 or something. But it's amazing how much I have left and it's always on the days I don't bring my lunch.
Yeah.
And so.
If you're going to the drive-thru.
No, I don't go to the driver. I come inside,
Yeah,
my head on the begging.
Yeah, you know who he is. Yeah, just leave that shit, it's fine.
But when Alexa was up there,
Oh, yeah.
I could go straight, or I could call her, like, I'm coming, thank you.
Yeah.
So, with retirement, planning for it, living in it, education, and other. So, to piggyback on you, so where I know financial advisors are not important people, right? Anybody, just because you say you're a financial advisor means nothing. How would you check a financial advisor? There is a website called BrokerCheck. It's brokercheck.com. It sounds too simple, too good to be true, but it is. BrokerCheck, so for my name, Kevin Commander, it will show you if I ever had my license suspended, any sanctions, any fines. That's a good way to do your due diligence when you're talking to somebody about your nest egg. You're sharing your real personal information with this person. You really ought to have a good idea if they've ever done anything getting any hot water before. And I'm not saying that anybody's got something on the record is a bad person. You could, very well could. It only takes one person, right? And the situation and stuff line up. And if it gets, if somebody calls my office and says, I don't like you, AT&T's going down the back. Mr. Smith, we talked about it last year that AT&T was going to cut their dividend in half to match Verizon's dividend. And it was likely that it might go down back. Well, I don't like it. And I don't like you either. Well, that's what they say. I don't like it. And I don't like you. I'm working with you. I'm obligated to file that as a complaint against me with my superiors. Obligated, have to. I'm not going to lose my job for it. It's not going to go through the process and end up on my U4. But I have to report it. Have to. So you can take a look on there. It may even say where I graduated college, which was correct. But what it doesn't say is it took me 13 years to do it. Because I know, I checked. I was working the whole time at UPS, the whole time. I was a better worker than I was a student. So think about that. So we've learned something. We've learned about Social Security. What about why you contact somebody like me? So retirement being number one, education, and then estate planning, right? Because transferring wealth to your beneficiaries it can be done a couple different ways, and depending on what kind of strategy you use, it can really affect that number. CARES Act. So used to, somebody inherits an IRA. I pass away, my wife and kids are upset for a day or two. And then they inherit my IRA, right? used to use a stretch R&D, that's required minimum distributions, which is nothing but the government saying, you've held this money inside this tax sheltered account for too long. Now you gotta take little pieces of it out every year and give us some tax revenue. Required minimum distribution. My wife inherits it. Used to, she could take what was a stretch R&D and just basically infinitely hold that account, and it could continue to grow in value forever if it was managed well. Now, since the CARES Act, you got 10 years. You gotta have all of that. It's gotta be out. So now, typically what happens is grandma and granddaddy, they pass away. Somebody that's in their higher income years, your kids are off in college or wherever they are, but you're usually, your salary's at the highest point, so you're making more than you ever have in your life. Looking toward retirement, you just inherit this money, you think, boy, this is good, but in reality, it's just a tax bomb. Because now you've inherited this money, which increases your income for that year. You're already in a higher tax bracket, the highest tax bracket you've ever been in. Now you inherit more, it's gonna push you in a higher tax bracket. So there's some things you can do to help minimize that. Another conversation, another day in the weeds, but just having those conversations and letting somebody know what the situation is will help prevent as much of that as possible. Please.
So, with my employer, they automatically put money into like a 401k or something like that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I get statements once a month showing me, you know, how things are going, but I don't know how to read that stuff. So how do I know whether or not?
You know where my office is. You're not gonna get charged anything. I told you about the hospitality bar and snacks and drinks. It's a problem.
He said, don't ask everything.
So to your point about 401k, you are worried about that and when people should start investing in their 401k. Exactly, but yes. So not waiting until.
You want to take advantage of every tax preferential dollar you can use. And speaking of taxes, pre-2020, pre-COVID, the United States was $21 trillion in debt as a country. Every economist in the world said that if we were going to keep our lights on as a country, eventually we're going to raise taxes. Now, those raised taxes sound like, oh my goodness, my taxes are going to go up. Yes, that could be that way. But politicians are creative about how they raise taxes and who they get raised on, and it kind of hides and go under the radar. We're going to raise taxes, but look over here. So you can manipulate that sum to where it doesn't affect everybody. Regardless, you're going to have to raise those taxes if we're going to keep spending the money we're spending. The problem is it's hard to get reelected when you raise the taxes. It's tricky. You got to do things. You look over here, we'll raise taxes. That was at $21 trillion in debt. Now we spend a little money since COVID came around. We're about $30 trillion in debt. So at 21, every economist that could add would tell you we're going to raise taxes. We're going to do something to generate more money coming into the government, and that's primarily done through raising taxes. So if we were going to have to do it back here, now we're $30 trillion in debt, so we sure going to have to do it here. Why is that important to us? Well, one, we pay the taxes eventually. You can only hide and stash it in other places long enough, and it's going to start coming out of everybody's paycheck. But also, does that have anything to do with how we invest our money? It should. So in 1997, Senator William Roth put forth a piece of legislation that created the Roth IRA. It was part of the U.S. Taxpayer Relief Act. That is the most powerful wealth building vehicle the U.S. taxpayer has at their disposal. So there's two types of IRAs out there, traditional and Roth. And I know there's other ones, but they either operate as a traditional or a Roth, right? It's after tax or tax deferred, one of the two. Forget about everything else except this little Roth IRA. This Roth IRA, I make $100 this year. I'm not going to take any deferrals. I'm not going to take any deductions. I'm going to take some after-tax money and I'm going to put it into a Roth IRA. That Roth IRA allows it to grow tax-free now and then come out tax-free forever. Forever. I don't care what you raise the tax rate to. I don't care how much we have to raise taxes. I don't care. But It doesn't affect these dollars anyways. So Roth dollars, those are hard to come by. Those are the most useful, powerful dollars a person can have.
Penalties when you take it out, anytime you take it out? Or do you have to wait till you're 65 to remove?
Great question. Both of, well, forget about that. 59 and a half is the magic number. Anything over 59 and a half, there's not an early distribution penalty. On the traditional IRA over here, you're going to pay taxes on your income. On the Roth, after 59, it's free and clear. However, on a Roth, you put the money in there, if you put $100 this year, next year it grows to $200. If you need to get back to that $100 principal that you put into it, you can without penalty. But you can't get to that growth.
So we talk about conversions too.
How much longer are those gonna be around here? How much longer? When you're talking about raising taxes, this is one of those ways you creatively can generate some tax revenue. And we gotta slide it under the radar. The mega Roth, the macro Roth, the Roth conversions are all on the chopping block. I don't think they're gonna be here much longer. However, right now, currently today, if you have a traditional IRA, a 401k, employer sponsored plan, whatever, you've got some money in an IRA, you have the ability to turn those, because it's basically a traditional IRA, turn those dollars into Roth dollars without the early distribution 10% penalty. It needs to be done delicately and some thought, some consideration, because there's going to be a tax consequence associated with it. So what usually ends up happening, except right now, there's a little bit more of a rush than there was, but you usually stretch that out over a number of years, where it's done incrementally over, say, 5 years. Some of them, we were doing it over 10 years. Some people, we kind of sped it up because it looks like they're not going around a whole lot longer.
Does it convert to income? Does it look at income and convert it, but there's no 10% penalty?
Correct. It's taxed just like it. It is. Yes, ma'am.
So if you are getting close to 59 and a half,
Yes, ma'am.
would it be a bad idea to kind of use your emergency funds, put your emergency fund savings into
Am I all right?
an IRA?
The very first step, and don't take this from me, take it from Dave Ramsey, right?
I like it.
I just had this conversation with somebody today. Say what you want to about him with his personality and stuff sometimes. His math works, right? His math works. That process is simple, it's easy to understand. My son can understand it, my mama can understand it. And we pay ourselves first. So before we do anything else, before we pay off any debt, before we start the debt snowball, before we do any of that, we build up that emergency fund, then we maintain it. Ramsey's gonna tell you to get 6 months worth of living expenses. I say if there's anything better than having one spare tire in my trunk, it's having 2. You wanna put 12 months worth of living expenses in there as an emergency fund? Fantastic. Is it making any money right now? Will it make money better one day? We're supposed to raise interest rates 3 times in 2020.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
2022.
We'll see what happens.
Jake, nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, there ain't been a 12-month projection that the Federal Reserve has ever given where they follow through with exactly what they were going to say. Not because they did anything wrong, just because things changed and you have to adjust to it. So don't take that 12-month projection as gospel. It's what they basically need to say. If things continued on the same path that they're on currently today, if they continued on that same trajectory, we would do this. And then they need to follow it up with a caveat that says, but we know they're not, so we probably ain't it. But that's their plan. And they need to. Interest rates need to be bumped up. I keep my opinion out of it. Inflation here, right, when you bump up interest rates a little bit, it kind of pushes the brakes on the monetary policy, kind of taps the brakes. Y'all have seen it with the stock market the past couple of weeks. You just hear the word interest rate increase. It just sell. I don't know why I'm selling, but I got to sell. I don't know why, but it don't sound good, boys. This ain't good for the home team to sell. My account's going down, which is the exact opposite thing what you ought to be doing. My account's going down. Don't sell, buy.
Yeah.
Helping people not become a statistic of emotional decisions is probably, I don't know. There's many things, but that is one of those where I really think I help move the needle for them. Is getting upstream and saying, okay, we know, we can look at 80 years of historical data, and we know that every 5 years we're going to have a bear market. It's not going to be exactly every 5 years, but on average, you're going to have a bear market, which means the market drops by at least 20%. Which means the news is on TV. You're not going to find a bottle of water. We're going to be out of toilet paper. The sky's falling, and just get your bullets and guns, go dig a hole and hang out for a while. That's bear market.
That's right.
That's right. That's bear market. We know that 1 every 5 years. We also know that even in the years where we have positive returns, there's never been a year where we had a positive return where we didn't have a 10% pullback in there somewhere. On average, we have 3 5% pullbacks. 1 10% pullback, and then every 5 years you have a 20% correction. When that happens, take advantage of it. Inside your 401k statement, you've got a pie chart. That pie chart shows a stock balance and then a fixed income balance. Just trust me, it's there. That stock side, when the market's going crazy, is going to go down in value. I promise you, it's going to go down in value. It's not worth as much as it was on last year. That fixed income is going to stay about the same or go up, because this is scared money over here. And then people move it exactly. The market's down, I'm scared, it doesn't feel good, I'm moving money over here. That makes that go up and down. Rebalance, take some of that cream off that side and put it on the equity side while the market's down, because that will generate more long-term growth over any 10-year period. Guaranteed. Always has. I say guaranteed. I mean, we aren't promised tomorrow, but it always has in the past. And that's another thing. People ask, this has always happened, but there ain't no guarantee on it, and there's not. None of this is guaranteed at all. But we all want to retire, and so if our job is to make a business plan, which is what we're doing, is just for a family instead of an actual business, then we use all available data and resources to make decisions. If I were a gambling man, and I know that Alabama and Vanderbilt are going to play football again in 2022, and they are, Vanderbilt might beat Alabama. They could, but I'm not putting my money on them. If I got to put my money on somebody, I'm putting it on Alabama. You can bet on Vandy if you want to. But don't do it as a financial advisor. Don't bet on Vanderbilt. Please. Don't do it.
Daughter was a Vandy cheerleader, she wouldn't bet on Vandy.
What'd she do? What'd she end up doing?
She's in law school now.
Is she at Vandy?
No, she's at Penn now, in Pennsylvania. Yeah, but she was a cheerleader, and she said it was so hard, they couldn't wait for basketball season.
You know what? Bless their heart, though. We're going out there and having the energy and keeping that smile on their face. Okay. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, if I'm self-employed,
Yes, sir.
let's say I'm making $4,000 a month, and I have no 401k, somebody putting in with me, anything like that. And when I'm retired, I'm gonna make the same thing a month, $4,000 a month. How much am I putting in, and what am I putting in?
Great question. First of all, being self-employed, you've got more privilege than someone like me. If you talk to somebody with a financial advisor office, Edward Jones, they're gonna say it's my office, my clients, whatever. This is Edward Jones' office, and Edward Jones people at the end of the day. Best case, you're kind of a franchisee. But you're a business owner. You're 1099, correct?
No, I'm just having to tell you, I got a job.
So, as a business owner, you can shelter more money, and you've got more options as a business owner than a standard W-2 employee. That's kind of, you're looking at a decision tree. That's, all right, I'm a business owner. Over here's W-2, over here's 1099. I'm over here. Then it branches off into how many do I have employees and how many do I have? And do I like them a lot? Because there are decisions that you need to make that could affect the profitability of your business and how much money you can shelter. So there's not an easy answer on it, but across the street, down the little hill, right turn signal on, man, you call me any day or come by, just make sure I got availability, leave your wallet in the car, I'm glad to help with anything. Call, come by, it doesn't matter. I got a great name.
Okay, so this is the last question. This
Yes,
came
ma'am.
from one of the people. I know you're not online, but we have people watching online.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing one.
You agreed to show up. and,
It's not Facebook.
Yeah.
If I said anything's gonna get me arrested.
Yes, one of our Facebook viewers wanted to ask, what does he mean by maximizing your social security benefits?
So the longer you wait, the higher it gets. Is
Okay.
that okay, you think? And it's about 7.5 or something like that. Don't quote me on it, but it's close to that. Every year you defer, it increases up to age 70. And once you start adding in situations with, I got divorced, well, were you married to him for 10 years? Because if you were, you can file on his. There's different levers that can be pulled. And you need to know that you have maximized it. You need to understand what choices you have. And, you know, a lot of, it can get different. You know, it can get complicated. Let's say that. I'm about to have a panic attack. I don't know. Let's say that. Yes, ma'am.
On social media,
Yes, ma'am.
we're seeing advertisements for real estate investing,
Yes, ma'am.
where a group of people come together and put their money together and they're investing in real estate. What are your, I mean, I know you may not, you probably don't have enough information, but what are your thoughts on, you know, as a financial advisor, what are your thoughts on that? Is that a good way to increase your income?
Number one, never putting all my eggs in one basket, right? Never. Part of your plan, if you kind of go up the hierarchy of a dollar bill and where I want to use, the first part of it is going to be a spender, right? So the spenders are here. They don't want to be a saver. They don't want to be an earner. I want to be earning money. If anybody gets any interest payments around here, it's coming to mama, not to anybody else. You know what I mean? It's coming here. I'm not paying. So once you get up to that level, you think, I'm going to do this. The rules with allocation of what you own can look a million different ways. Specifically, whether it's real estate, whether it's rental property, whether it's stocks, bonds, securities, mutual funds, there are great ones and there are junk in every one of those categories. So real estate investment trust, like you mentioned, in theory, could they be good? Absolutely. But across the street, go down here, it's a right turn signal.
Yeah, but I gotta come 50 minutes.
Call this number. Tell me what it is. I ran out, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you got to say something. No, they go, I bring one from here.
I'm down the street.
Thank you.
Very well.
Make sure you mention, only the people in here. Come to your office.
I did the same thing.
That's not me.
Heather on his card
It's not me.
Yes.
It is nice having them. So she, by the way, Heather, my assistant, is what the title is. She's not only my assistant, she's the office manager. She makes sure I am where I'm supposed to be and stops me from doing dumb stuff all the time. And without her, I'd be lost. The reason why I'm here right now is because yesterday she said, you're supposed to be at church tomorrow. You said you were gonna go up there first and take a look around, and I called you immediately after that. So, yeah, she's graduated college, single mama, got divorced, raised 2 girls, graduating college in May as an adult. We all know what that's like. And she's gonna be a financial advisor in the future. next week. Real estate investment trust. Some good, some not. They usually pay really high dividends, but we've seen the real estate market go just like other markets. So not all your eggs in one basket. Please. And if you ever want me to research anything for you, and I'll take it from tip the bow to the start, all the way through, I'm happy to hear it. And leave your pocketbook in the car. And I'll give you all the intel and all the information, and never ask you to come by or bring anything to me. Because this is a church, and I just feel weird. Going to church to get clients. I'm already in trouble.
All right,
Yes, ma'am.
well, thank you. Yeah.
Anytime, any day.
You know, I will say just as a, you know, I was really looking forward to his presentation, because when I reached out to him, well, this has been just like awesome in general. But when I called him, he was like, are you sure? Because you know, I'm a little rough around the edges. I was like, bring it. We need some diversity. Bring it.
I forgot something.
Yes.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I had an objective tonight, and it wasn't to get clients. I've already told you that was my objective. I'm not good at it because I'm not charging. But I had an objective. And if we use math and statistics to make decisions, think about this one. So the business I'm part of, Edward Jones, is not a publicly traded business. It's a partnership. So I'm not beholden to stockholders, which is fine if you are, but we're not. It also affects my compensation as to the profitability of the firm. So the firm does better, I do better, right? And I don't plan on going anywhere. This fits me like a glove. Think about who's retiring. Every day we have 10,000 baby boomers retiring. Every day. Every day, fewer and fewer of them look like me. Does that make sense? Every day. If not you, think about who you know, relatives, friends. The trend in the world of business is to go towards automation and remove the human component as much as you can. That's the trend, right? This is one industry where if somebody's managing your nest egg and trying to build a comprehensive financial plan for you and your family, and you know, you live in North Carolina, my mom still lives here, and I need somebody watching after mom for me, you want a human being there in that spot. So it can't be replaced. What I'm saying is where a lot of career fields are dwindling as far as demand, this one's going up. If you look at any of those commercials I was telling you about with the Golf Channel, and talking about growing vineyards and having yachts and whatever your financial dream is, there's something missing in a lot of it. Y'all follow what I'm saying? They all look like me. If you've got 10,000 baby boomers per day retiring, and you want to be able to capture a large part of that market share, forget about it being just the right thing to do, which Jones, by the way, knows that it is and encourages it. You need to have access to people from all communities. And you need to have a representation for your business that looks like a retirement community or folks that want to have financial goals. So if you have people that want to do something that like help people, they like the idea of kind of building and seeing something grow and kind of got an entrepreneurial spirit, please send them my direction. Please. Nothing gets me more excited than somebody that is enthusiastic about building a business. So please, anytime, any day, send them to me. Love to talk. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will say that for as many times as he told you to leave your wallet in the car, make sure you lock your vehicle when you leave it in the car. So you don't come out robbed. I I just want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. This has been really good. Really, really good. I've learned a lot. I'm sure I have many other questions, but as has been stated, I can just go down and right. Yeah, she's too loud. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening, and we do have a little token of appreciation for all of you, the ones who presented that.
Yes, yes, yes. You're welcome. You're welcome.
This concludes our little seminar this evening. Much to chew over, and this won't be the last time that we do this. It was fun. I appreciated it. Learned a lot. My kids asked me a ton of questions, and yeah. So let us go ahead. We'll close with prayer, and then you are dismissed. Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together and learn the best practices and principles of how we can use the money that we receive. Now, Lord, we ask for your blessings as we go our separate ways. Please give us guidance and wisdom with how to use our resources and who we can trust with our resources. In Jesus' name, amen.